Hello and welcome to EngLearn. Knowing what we're doing right is great, but sometimes to learn, we need to figure out what we're doing wrong, so we can avoid those mistakes and do better next time. In this video, I've gathered some of the most important mistakes students make in extended writing. Understanding the common mistakes and making sure to avoid them can directly help you achieve a better grade. So, without further ado, let's look at the most common mistakes. Mistake number 1. Not planning your writing. If you follow my channel, I'm sure you saw this one coming. I'm a big advocate of planning your writing, even if it's just a very short outline. If you wish, you can take some time to think about why it's a bad idea not to plan and how planning can benefit you. In a nutshell, planning helps you organize your writing and develop your ideas properly. That's exactly what examiners are looking for in your writing. When you get your task, you will hopefully have many ideas about how to go about writing your topic. Not all of those ideas will be good. Planning will help you sort them out and figure out how to write about each subtopic so it makes the most sense and so your writing flows smoothly and logically. If you simply start writing without making a plan, you will just write whatever pops into your mind, and chances are at some point your writing is going to fall apart like a house of cards. To make sure my students plan, I always tell them, even if, in terms of your language ability, you have the potential to get an A, it's likely you will get a B instead if you don't plan. This isn't always the case, but planning simply helps you organize your thoughts and write better. Even the best writers can benefit from having a good plan. In your plan, you can plan a variety of different things, including general ideas for each paragraph, supporting details for each paragraph, advanced vocabulary related to the topic to make sure your writing sounds sophisticated, and reminders to include advanced structures, different sentence types, punctuation, and proofreading that will help take your writing to the next level. That being said, your plan doesn't need to be overly elaborate or long. Make sure not to spend too much time on your plan, or you might lose precious time. The next common mistake is not responding to the task. To understand what this means, first we must realize that every writing task in the AS level exam gives you information about what text type you're required to write, what audience you're writing for, what the purpose of your writing is, and what topic you're writing about, and what to focus on within that topic. And students tend to make all kinds of mistakes related to all these elements. Sometimes they don't know or they don't follow the conventions of the text type they were given. Or they don't pay attention to who the text is intended for, which results in writing in the wrong register, being either too formal or, more often, too informal. Students also often lose sight of the purpose of their writing and omit important elements. For example, writing to inform needs to include a lot of specific details. Writing to persuade has to rely heavily on the use of persuasive techniques. And writing to entertain needs to have vivid descriptions and use lots of figurative language. If students lose sight of the purpose, they're going to omit at least some of those elements, which will result in a poorer overall score. Finally, students sometimes completely miss the mark when it comes to focusing on the topic they're required to write about. Let's explore this a little bit further. The task will always set out quite precisely what your topic is and what you need to focus on. The key here is to focus on the topic you're given throughout the entire text. Everything you write has to somehow be related to the topic you're given. Yes, you can have analogies and anecdotes and quotes and real-life examples, but ultimately, they all need to relate to the topic you're asked to write about. For example, in this task, you're asked to write about the influence of social media on society. More precisely, you need to focus on the benefits and drawbacks of using social media. Now, let me make an example here. Let's say your mother has sent you to the grocery store and gave you a shopping list listing all the things she needs you to buy. You go to the store and forget all about the list and you just buy whatever you like. What do you think what will happen when you get home? Will mom be pleased? I didn't think so either. Well, the same goes for your exam. If you get a task that very clearly and precisely sets out what you need to do, and you partially or completely focus on unrelated topics, guess what? You're not going to achieve a great result. In this case, again, the task asks you to write about the influence of social media on society, focusing on the benefits and drawbacks of using social media. What students often do instead is they write extensively about their own experiences of using social media. Yes, you can mention those as an anecdote, but don't devote the entire paper or the majority of the paper to your own experience. Sometimes, students' writing just isn't focused enough, so instead of discussing social media, they discuss the internet or even technology as a whole. Sometimes, students ignore the task and choose to write only about benefits and not drawbacks, or vice versa. This is completely fine if the task asks you to give your own opinion, but in this case, it would result in you losing lots of points because you completely ignored half of what you were asked to do. Finally, when they're not sure what to write about or when they haven't planned well in advance, students resort to teenagers' favorite pastime, complaining. Yes, I know we all have a lot to say about certain aspects of our society that are very flawed, but your AS level exam is not the place to do it, unless it's very closely related to the topic. And this brings me to my next point and a similar mistake students often make: rambling. Let me illustrate this point with a sweet little story titled, "Where's the Bathroom?" Imagine this scenario. You're on a long school trip and you've been riding the bus for about 4 or 5 hours. You finally make a stop at a petrol station and you go up to the first person you see to ask for directions to the nearest bathroom because you really need to go. But instead of quickly telling you where the bathroom is, the man chooses instead to give you a 10-minute lecture of the history of the petrol station and the entire town. Not a very good idea, is it? Unfortunately, this is exactly what happens with many students when they're asked to write a long paper. They start writing about one topic and then they steer off completely. Even if they do get back on track, they'll lose valuable points because they've wasted words and gone off track. To prevent rambling, we need to know why it happens. And it usually happens either because of poor planning or because the student hasn't read the task carefully and identified what he or she needed to focus on. Also, students often feel like they don't have enough ideas to fulfill the word count requirement, so they just start writing about whatever they can think of. This is usually the consequence of nerves, and I am aware that exams are very stressful, but situations like this can easily be prevented with lots of practice and feedback from teachers and peers. To help you prevent rambling, in your studies focus on structuring your essay well with appropriate paragraphing and transitions, practicing as much as you can, and planning your writing so you don't run out of ideas. The next mistake students often make is they don't show off. That's right, you heard me well. In this exam, you're supposed to show off. The examiners don't know you and they don't know what your English level is, so you need to show them by using high-level vocabulary and complex structures. Instead, students often make big mistakes in this area. One of the most common and very jarring mistakes is bad grammar and spelling, especially when it comes to very simple forms, like capitalizing your I's, the way you spell the second person pronoun you, homonyms, and capitalization. Even if correct, simple grammar is simply not enough at this point. You need to move beyond the simplest grammar structures and show your knowledge of advanced tenses and sentence structures like conditionals, passives, cleft sentences, and reported speech. Using simple vocabulary is another common mistake. Your vocabulary needs to be advanced, complex, and specific. You need to use less common words that precisely explain what you're trying to say. Using simple vocabulary leads to repetitiveness. Unless you know many synonyms, you will often get stuck repeating the same word or phrase over and over again, which will have a negative impact on your grade. Students also make mistakes with syntax. Most commonly, they use very long sentences, called run-on sentences, which should actually be split into smaller chunks. There are also often problems with subject-verb agreement and students mixing tenses or using inappropriate tenses. Punctuation is another problem. To showcase your knowledge, you need to use a variety of different forms of punctuation, including colons and semicolons, quotation marks, dashes, hyphens, and so on. Finally, Students often let the spoken language they hear on social media or use with their friends seep into their writing. Remember, even if you are writing a rather informal piece, there is almost never justification for using slang or inappropriate language. Written language is always more structured and formal than spoken language, and you can't write as though you're texting your best friend. I know this seems like a basic requirement, but it happens more often than I'd like to admit. The next mistake is not engaging the audience. Engaging the audience refers to two things at the same time. The first is rather obvious. You need to correctly identify the audience and adapt your register and style to suit it. Your writing will be very different if you're writing for other teenagers than if you're writing for senior citizens, for example. The next point is a little more nuanced, however. Not only does your writing need to be suitable for your audience, it also needs to be interesting for them. This means your ideas need to be original and unique. Let me put it this way. Even on a very superficial level, you want to be original and stand out. You want to keep the interest of both your imaginary audience and your actual audience, the examiner. Your examiner will likely have a huge stack of exams to grade. Many or all students will write on the same topics, and of course, after reading 2 or 3 student papers on the benefits and drawbacks of social media, the ideas tend to become very repetitive and old. Your goal is to make your writing engaging and varied, so your paper stands out among dozens of similar ones. This doesn't mean you should advocate outlandish ideas, but you should be original and make your own voice shine through in your writing. Finally, I always tell my students that the golden rule for AS level English is be specific. Opposite to that stands generalization, which is a common mistake. Generalization refers to you writing about your topic in very general terms, without providing vivid details, concrete examples, or specific arguments. This creates vague, bland writing that is not going to engage anyone. Your writing becomes boring, unoriginal, and repetitive. If you constantly use fluffy, vague ideas without being specific, your arguments get watered down and don't seem based on reality. Ultimately, all of that leads to your writing and your thinking looking very low level and basic, which is exactly the opposite of what you're trying to achieve. To sum up, the most common mistakes students make are not planning their writing, not responding to the task, rambling, using poor grammar and simple vocabulary, not engaging the audience, and generalizing. Which of these mistakes is the biggest problem for you? Comment in the comments section below. Also, if you want to see the writing process for paper 2, click on the link on your screen. Make sure to like and subscribe for more videos. Happy exam season, everyone!